Hey guys, Matt Bell here with the Electric Violin Shop, back in my home studio in Cary, North Carolina. Not in the shop today, I'm traveling this week. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a lesson maybe on how to do something that you're going to do a lot of. If you are a amplified violinist or amplified string player, you're going to be playing songs that you didn't write and that somebody else recorded. We call it a cover song. There's sort of sometimes a stigma associated to being a cover band, and I don't know why, but it's all these sort of snobby, we only play original music bands, and whatever. The overwhelming majority of people who play out are going to play music that somebody else wrote and recorded. So how are we going to do that as a string player when a lot of the songs that we're going to be playing didn't necessarily have string parts on the original version of the song? I made a whole career out of this. I've played in cover bands for about 20 years, mostly covering songs that, well, didn't have a string player on the original recording. So I sort of learned a couple of tricks, and I thought I'd pass those on to you guys. You're going to play cover music. It's inevitable. It's a lot of fun. It's less work than having to write all these songs yourself, and you get to play songs that, people know. People love hearing music that they know. It is challenging sometimes because, like I said, not every cover song, most cover songs, are not going to have a part that's already there for a string player, whether it be a violinist, violist, cellist, whatever. So it's an outstanding opportunity for creativity on your part. If you're a drummer, there's a little less freedom for you. If you're a bass player, there's a little less freedom for you. For a string player, because there is no part in a lot of cases for you to copy that's on the original song, you get to be creative. So there's a number of different ways to do that. Now, we got to think about cover songs. There's a couple of different theories on playing cover music. Sometimes you want to play it just like the record, and maybe that shows how old I am. We didn't actually listen to records when I was a kid. Not quite that old. But yeah, so just like the record is what you'll hear, and that means that we want all of the parts. If it was on the original recording, we want that part. We want as close to that tone as we can get. We want all the harmonies. We want the same beat, we want the same tempo. We want it to sound like when somebody's walking by in the street, they're like, is that the original recording or is that a band? So that's one way to go about making cover music. And it's a great way to, I don't necessarily say that's the way I always want to do it, but it's great to be able to do that. To be able to hear all those parts. It's a lot of fun to try to match those tones, and it's this thing I never really got a whole lot into, but it's a really good exercise for you to be able to nail a cover song and make it sound just like the original artist. There's a method that you might want to go, a complete remake. Maybe we're changing style, we're changing key. Hayden Vetera did a really cool version of "Remember Me" from the movie Coco. It is completely different. He did it in minor, and it's originally in major. He turned it into like this hardcore techno. It's amazing. Go check out Tequila Rock Revolution version of "Remember Me" to hear what a complete remake of a song is about. He completely reimagined the song. Then there's sort of something in the middle, which is what most people are going to do. You want it to be recognizable as the song. If we're in a worship song, we want people to know that we're playing Good Good Father. Okay, it's not you're like, hey, where the heck did that go? What the heck is this song even? These words sound familiar, but I don't recognize this at all. But you don't necessarily want to sound just like the Hillsong Band, or you don't want to sound just like Garth Brooks. Maybe you want to sound like the song's recognizable, but it's got your spin on it a little bit. So one of the things that we would do if we're doing that, which is sort of the hybrid version of just like the record or completely reimagined, there's going to be some signature lines in these songs, and it's the either the solo or it's the head. Think Brown Eyed Girl. Da 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 da. That's Brown Eyed Girl. You can't really do Brown Eyed Girl without that line. It's not Brown Eyed Girl if you don't play that. So there will be some signature lines in there. Are we going to play them? In the case of Brown Eyed Girl, you should play them. In other tunes, maybe not quite as iconic as Brown Eyed Girl, you might say, well, yeah, I mean, that line is a signature line of that song, but maybe we want to do it differently. Maybe we'll write our own signature line for that song and make it more of a remake than a cover. But if we are going to play that signature line, who's going to play it? You need to look at your band and go, all right, if we're playing Brown Eyed Girl, who's playing da 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 da? Who's playing that? And then how are we going to play it? If two of us are going to do it, are we going to double? Are we going to both play the same thing? Not very creative. Are we going to play in harmony? Because if you listen, there's actually those are moving thirds in there. Maybe you play the bottom one and I'll play the top one. Okay, that'll be kind of cool, a little different. Maybe we'll play in octaves. If I got a bass player playing this line and a violin playing it, we're going to be in different octaves from each other. That's fine. Maybe we want to write it. Maybe we want to flip it. Instead of da 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 da, we'll go da 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 da. Hey, that's reminiscent of Brown Eyed Girl, but not quite the same. Okay, so you've got to figure out what you're going to do with those signature lines. Are we going to play them? How are we going to play them? Who's going to play them? Get that figured out. And the way you do that is you've got to figure out what your personnel is. If you're in a worship group, like I play in a lot of worship groups, it's a different band every week. We don't necessarily have the same players every week. The church I go to is a huge church. We got a lot of people to pull from. Whatever band is on stage on a Sunday, or used to be on stage on a Sunday, I may have never played with that iteration, those 5 or 6 people. We may have never played together before. So maybe we've got a guitar player this week. Maybe we've got 2 guitar players this week. Maybe we have a keyboard player this week instead. Maybe we have 2 keyboard players. Maybe there's a sax player over there. So instrumentation matters when we say who's going to cover that part. It depends on what instruments do I have. It depends on skill level. Maybe I've got a person who's kind of new to this. They're sort of filling in. Maybe it's a pretty difficult part. Say we're doing Cult of Personality. We're not doing that at church, but we'll switch gears. We're talking about a bar band. Maybe we're doing Cult of Personality, and my guitar player can't exactly hang with Vernon Reed. So somebody else is going to have to play that part. Maybe it has to do with a momentary ability. Maybe we're doing a Rush cover and, Geddy Lee can do some pretty impressive things playing the bass and singing at the same time. Maybe I can't do that. Maybe I'm busy singing and I don't really have the ability to nail that bass part the way I want. So we'll let somebody else take that. Maybe in a band like mine where we've got 2 guitars, violin, bass, and drums, maybe the one guitar player is covering another part and he can't play that lead line because he's laying down a rhythm line. A lot of times, if you listen to cover songs, listen to ZZ Top. They're playing. It's a 3-piece band: guitar, bass, and drums. But when you listen to the record, the original recording, my God, I am old. When you listen to the original recording, when they go to a solo, guitar solo, you can still hear rhythm guitar going. Well, that's because they multi-tracked it and can't do that live with a 3-piece. So that's sort of what happens if my guitar player has been chunking along on rhythm the whole time and now he's got to go take a solo, it leaves a hole. So maybe I'll jump in and I'll plug that hole. Maybe that player's going to take a break on this song. Maybe that's your P song. If we do a 2-hour set and not everybody's bladder can last 2 hours, maybe we go, hey, this can be your P song. I'll cover the guitar part. Inside info. All right. Here are some resources for helping you find, as you're listening to the original version of a song, how am I going to write out all these parts? When I listen to a Boston song, there is a ton of stuff going on in there. How am I going to make sure that I know what all those parts are? There's only 3 of us. There's a violin, there's a guitar player, and a keyboard player. Well, there's like 8 things going on. How am I going to know what those parts are so we can decide how we're going to hand those out to each other? You want a really good set of headphones. You'll find if you listen with a really good set of headphones versus speakers, you're going to hear things that you didn't hear when you were listening in your car or you're listening on your phone or whatever. So really good headphones are going to help you hear some clarity, and they're going to help separate things out in stereo. A lot of times things are mixed in stereo and you'll have parts pushed from one side to the other. And if you've got headphones on, your brain can separate those things out and you can hear all those parts better. Another good resource is going to YouTube and pulling up some karaoke tracks. We're going to do a Sublime song. Maybe that's a bad example because Sublime's not terribly complicated. But you know, the vocals are in, maybe the Eagles. There's a lot of vocals in the way of some of that because every one of those guys could sing like a bird. So, gosh, I can't really tell if that's Timothy B. Schmidt singing that high part or if there's some, is that a steel guitar? What the heck is going on there? The guys who make karaoke tracks are really good at hearing all these parts. So if you go to YouTube and you pull up the karaoke track to an Eagles song, all the vocals are gone and all you're going to hear is the instruments. That's really helpful. So it's going to help you hear, oh, okay, yeah, gosh, that was a steel guitar in there. Maybe that's a part that I can cover on the violin. Look up cover versions. There are tons and tons of cover versions on YouTube. And a lot of these artists have gone through the same thing you're going through. They're trying to figure out who's going to play what part. Is that part important? Should we push that part? You know, what are we going to do with this? Listen to 4 or 5 different cover versions and listen to how other people make the decisions that you're trying to make. Maybe you're going to hear an idea that you go, yeah, I think I'd like to copy that idea. Or maybe you hear and go, whoa, that's not good. They completely missed that one part. That lets you know that you've got to have that part. There's another excellent resource called karaokeversion.com. It's karaoke minus version. It's here on the screen for you. If you go to that website, you can go click custom background track or custom karaoke track, and you get a screen that looks like this. You can see where it's got all the tracks listed: drums, bass, rhythm, guitar left, rhythm, guitar right, electric guitar. So you can actually go in and mute or solo these individual parts. Like that part where it says synth strings down there. You're like, yeah, I'm not really sure what, I'm hearing something, but I'm not sure exactly what. You can solo that synth strings channel and listen to it. Now you may have to buy this track if you want some of these things, and you can do all your own mixing and all kinds of stuff. And it's like maybe $3 for a track. If it's going to save you an hour worth of poking around and trying to find parts, people will be, oh, that's cheating. There's no such thing as cheating. If we're doing this for a living, I have to maximize the amount of efficiency that I have. Maybe I've got 30 songs to learn this week, and I can't just, beat it out old school. I'm going to use all the resources at my disposal, and this is a resource for you. Karaoke-version.com is maybe going to help you find some of those parts that, I really don't have time to be trying to figure out what each of these parts are. I need to do this as quick as possible. That's a really good resource. And if it costs you $3, then, whatever, $3 well spent. So I wanted to give you an example of a tune that you have all heard. And it's one that I've played 1,000 times. I've played this song. It starts out with a piano. I've played this song in bands that don't have a piano. So gosh, what do we do there? So there are several parts in here. There's an intro, and I'm going to play this for you real quick. You know the song, right? Okay. So there's an intro that's all piano in there. He's playing, the ba-dum, 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 ba with the right hand. Bom, 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 bom. That's all done with left hand. What if you don't have a piano player? Gosh, what are you going to do? Well, let's think about this. There's 2 parts there. We need to plug that hole. It doesn't have to be exact. The tone doesn't have to be exact. In fact, it's kind of cool if it's not. If it starts out with something other than a piano, hey, all of a sudden, this is a more creative, cover of this thing. It doesn't sound just like the record. I know what song it is, but it doesn't sound just like the record. That's cool. These guys put their own spin on it. Sometimes you did that because you had to. Sometimes you did it because you're really creative. You can just tell them it's that. Tell them I said it was okay. So let me grab my violin here and we'll do a demo. I will say there's going to be a little bit of a technical issue here. When I play the audio through my streaming software here, I don't actually hear it. There's a little bit of latency. I don't actually hear it for like 1/10 of a second. So I'm going to try to play a little bit in front of the beat, and we'll kind of guess on the latency here and see what happens. All right, make sure that my rig is all on here. All right, you can hear that. I can't actually hear myself playing. I don't have a monitor set up here. So they say you should never do disclaimers, and I just did a disclaimer. So there you go. What do they know? With an octave pedal if you wanted. So that's just kind of how that works. We do the intro, and you can just do it this way, or you can sort of the piano player does this little sort of, there we go, sort of this little rocking thing on the piano, and you can simulate that if you really want. Doesn't really matter. You can do it however you want. It's your band. You're doing what you want. But that's one way to do it. Maybe you have a guitar player that's going to play that top, jingle, 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 and you like, hey, well, I'll cover the bass part. Maybe I'll get an octave pedal in here. Okay, good times. So there is another part here. There's a guitar riff. Again, there are two parts. Just plug the hole. It doesn't have to be. Exact. So let's listen to this. That's right, sir. Or you could keep playing. If there's, if you've got a guitar player, he's probably going to want to play that part. But if he's covering this, if he's covering that part, then maybe you'll cover the guitar riff, and maybe you'll do it with a, maybe you use a. Whatever. So again, it doesn't have to be exact. It just sort of helps if you've got, in general, you've got something reminiscent of that part. That's what people want to hear. People, when they're at the bar, they don't remember exactly how the original goes. They don't remember, did it go 4 times? Did it go 3 times? They don't know. So just plug the hole. Don't lose too much sleep over it. That was not what I expected to happen. Okay. Let's go to, there are some synth stabs in here. Right, so that part is in there. It's and I'll cut off my octave pedal here. So those parts are there, but if I want to sort of make it sound a little more like a synth thing or a string section, you can change your tones a little bit. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. There are some piano stabs. All that stuff is in there. Now, we're going to get to the solo part. There's a really famous solo here. If you're doing this song, you should probably play this solo. You're not going to improv anything better than this. You're certainly not going to improv anything that the audience wants to hear more than they want to hear this solo. So you got a couple things you can do. You can play the solo the way it is in the song if your guitar player is busy doing other stuff. If your guitar player is going to take the solo, here's a little fun thing you can do if you want to work with him. Maybe you don't want to play the same solo as him. That's really kind of not cool. But there is a fun thing that my band has done that people really dig, and we have a fun. So you can double that solo, but if you do it up a third or you do a little harmony thing on there, that's kind of fun. I wouldn't ever play the exact same notes a guitar player is playing. That's a good way to get yourself thrown out of a band. Um, but if you do sort of like that two guitar thing, hey, that's kind of fun. It's also important to know that a song like this has got tons and tons of vocals in it. If you're not a singer, then maybe one of the things you can do is you can help cover some of those harmony parts with your violin. I've never even tried this before because I'm a singer. You know, it goes to "Don't Stop Believing." You can just play along with the singer. Maybe play the harmony parts, probably better. Don't stop believing. You play along with them in a harmony part that sort of fills things up a little more. Those are just things that you can do with your violin that are going to help. They're going to help sort of fill things out. The other thing that I also tell my students is listen to the things that are happening on stage. When you hear something happening on stage, somebody else doing a part, don't do that. If you already, like we hear orchestra people are so used to trying to match the player who's next to them. Don't do that in a rock or a worship or a country band setting. It's not cool. There's already somebody playing that part. Don't play what they're playing. So I'll tell people to stay out. If the singer is doing something interesting, you should not be doing something interesting. So stay out of the way of the singer. It is really, truly all about the singer. And I don't just say that because I'm a singer. It's about the singer. Stay out of the singer's way. Don't step on their part. Don't be doing all kind of noodly whatever while they're singing. Not cool. Don't double the guitar player under most circumstances. Occasionally, you know, there's rules are meant to be broken, but if you're going to double the guitar player, it should be for an artistic reason, not just because you couldn't think of something else to do. If you hear a lot of sort of stabby stuff that people are doing, maybe you want to play some long tones. If you hear a lot of long tones, maybe you're going to play like a maybe you do something a little stabbier. I don't know. In cover tunes, listen for the parts. Listen for all the parts that are there. You should, as a string player, you're kind of going to get stuck with all the weird stuff. So, because the guitar player is going to hear guitar parts and he's going to zoom in on those. And the keyboard player is going to hear keyboard players and keyboard parts, and he or she's going to zoom in on those. You're kind of going to be left with everything else. So when you're listening to these tunes, try to listen for, wow, okay, this is happening. Okay, let's maybe write out that part, transcribe that. Maybe here's another thing that's also happening. Here's another thing that's happening. Listen for sound floors too. That's a thing that we get a lot in recorded music, is there will be sort of what I call a sound floor. And whether it is just a sort of a drone tone that's way down in the mix that just sort of, it's like a glue that holds the mix together. Sometimes there's little washy parts. I've got this tone that I use that's it's a reverb with all the dry sound pulled out. And I may just, in a song, I may just sort of let that hum in there. Hear that reverb just sort of sets in there. Underneath the mix, you wouldn't really so much hear it out front. A person may see you playing and go, yeah, I can't hear the violin. You got to turn the violin up. You're like, I got it, man. I got it. So sometimes those little glue things can just hold a mix together. So it's nice to have a bunch of different tones. But listen for the parts that are in the original recording. You should know what all those parts are. And then when you get to rehearsal, you'll know which parts are not being played, and you can kind of just decide for yourself, which of those parts am I going to play? I want to play this part on this section of the tune, this part on this section of the tune. But hopefully this little lesson on Don't Stop Believing is going to give you a couple ideas on maybe different ways that you can occupy yourself in a cover song. Also, always remember, this is a perfectly legal move to not play at all. Rests are notes too, and they pay the same as notes do, and they'll never be out of tune. So it's not a bad idea that if there's a part of the tune that you're like, yeah, I really can't hear anything for me to do there, then this move right here, just do that. Don't play. If you don't know what to play, don't play. It pays the same. It's all cool. So hopefully that helps you. If you've got a song that you've been working on and you're like, gosh, my band wants to do such and such a song and I really cannot figure out what to play on this song, I teach Skype lessons. You can hit me up and for a nominal fee, something. I'm happy to help you. We'll listen to the song and we'll try to figure out what to play. So you can hit me up. Thank you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Y'all be good.